Welcome to the Aiki Dojo Podcast. I am David Ito, Chief Instructor of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles. And with me is...
Ken Watanabe Shihan.
And Bill D'Angelo.
So, what should we talk about today?
Sensei, the topic for us that's teed up is, what are some common challenges that Aikido practitioners face in their training, and what are some of the ways they can overcome or work their way through these challenges?
Well, that's kind of a lot, but like...
It's huge.
Well, I mean, there's...
Do you want to break it down?
Well, I mean, the breakdown is really like what? Philosophical challenges, mental challenges, physical challenges, and I don't know, spiritual. Is that really a challenge?
I think it is. I mean, if you're training hard, I think spiritual level, we're all trying to get to that level, right? So it's part of your training.
Well, it's part of your training, but I don't know. You really shouldn't think about it until you're Sandan, Godan.
It's a thing that develops in the training. It's already in the training, and the longer you train, the more you realize it's all spiritual.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. It is all spiritual. But I mean, like the levels to get there is what? Mind, body.
Mind, body. What they say is physical, technique, spiritual. Those are the three steps.
What would be some of the physical barriers? Well, because the thing is that it's really that Aikido, you learn to move in a unorthodox way. And that becomes the first...
A non-intuitive.
Well, non-intuitive to the Western mind.
Right.
Right. And once you do it, you go, oh my gosh, right? It totally makes sense. When you move it, oh yeah, that makes total sense. But yeah, like you move in a... I mean, it's bad to say in a non-resistive, non-confrontational, non-aggressive way is not the right way to say it, but you really do move in a different way.
It's almost like you move in a way that's not how a martial artist would move.
Like a what you think of as Chuck Norris moves.
Yes, Chuck Norris, karate, BJJ, Krav Maga, those kind of ways you move. The way we move in Aikido is very smooth. Well, it's based on a weapons movement.
So then, like in the movements, like what I was telling the people this morning is that in classes that we don't wait to be attacked. You are moving as they move. The tachi-ai is mutual movement, right? Even tachi, standing, right? Coming from seated to standing. The ai, the coming together is not like one side comes to the other. It's right. The two sides come together. So like in Aikido, we destroy people's attack with movement.
That's correct.
We neutralize their attack with movement.
Timing and spacing.
How do you see that, Sensei, or you can... How do you see that this different style of movement as being an obstacle? Is it because it's unfamiliar to the average person? Is that the obstacle or the challenge in this type of movement?
Well, yeah, in Aikido, we run to the fire. Everyone else is running away from it or trying to block it. They're trying to shield themselves from the attack. They block to shield themselves from the attack. They counterpunch to prevent themselves from being attacked. We move in on the attack. We are running toward the fire.
That's correct. Yeah, we move into the attack. At the moment of contact, we would turn and evade the attack. So in essence, your opponent thinks they got you. You make him think they got you, but in the process of the technique, you're neutralizing their balance, and you're breaking their power, and you're bringing their movement into your own movement. And in that way, by the time they realize it, they're already thrown down or pinned or maybe struck or kicked.
But do you think that people think it's hard to grasp?
I would say when I first started Aikido, most of the techniques, why did we do that? Why are we doing Tenkan? Right. It's such a abstract movement, right? There's no martial application to it. For me, as a beginner whose view of martial arts was chop sake on Channel 5 on KTLA on Sunday, Kung Fu theater.
I think there's a common thread that I hear both I hear from people in the dojo, but I also read it, is when people are asked about the martial effectiveness of Aikido, often you'll hear teachers say, Aikido is different because it takes longer to develop basic competency in certain techniques. I don't know that that's actually true, but that's the narrative I hear a lot, that if you're starting in Aikido first year or two, you may not understand, as Ken was saying, you may not understand a lot of the movement.
Well, but that's the thing. Like if you watch any of the movies in the 80s, and then whenever the guy threw the person or got them off balance, like the ref would say, "No Aikido," and you think, "What? That's not really." I mean, so that infers that Aikido is a higher level martial art,
Right?
And so when we're trying to attack our opponents, we just want to punch them in the face, but you have to move in on them, and then your center dictates where and how you're going to attack them. So if your center is pointed this way, you're going to do this. If your center pointed that way, you're going to do that. But in other martial arts, it's just moving in.
Yeah. I mean, I do know, I have a very good friend who's a martial artist in New York, does karate. And the first time we met, we were exchanging, what do you do? I do this. He's like, I do karate, I do Aikido. And the reaction I got from him was fascinating. He's like, oh man, Aikido is amazing. And a little bit esoteric, but he was like so happy to talk to someone who did Aikido because he really appreciated and loved the specialness and the uniqueness of the way Aikido blends versus some of the techniques that he used. But he admired it, which I thought was interesting because we often get a lot of flack, but it was high-level martial artists. He's like, no, Aikido is really effective.
But if from like a Greek wrestling standpoint, do they even talk about like this idea of moving in on your opponent, or are you waiting for them to grab you and then you grab them?
Well, I mean, the three martial arts in ancient Greece were Pancratian, which is everything, right? Greco-Roman wrestling and boxing. And when you read the texts about these things, what you read is that Pancratian was often most a test of wills because people got severely injured during practice, and it was almost the person who could withstand the most damage and not give up won. Boxing was very aggressive. The one that I think is closer to Aikido is Greco-Roman wrestling, as it was done in the Olympics, where there was a lot of sophistication to it. The body movements had to be, you'd have feints, fakes, blends. It's very different than the other two. I think it's closer to Aikido.
Which one of those three martial arts in that era was the most dominant?
So Pancratian was considered the highest level because you were doing all the moves in Greco wrestling and all the boxing plus kicking. So you had to be able to negotiate any kind of attack, pin, joint lock, throw, choke. One that was real, I always think of you when I think of Pancratian because you do that grabbing over the tops of the fingers because fingers are very vulnerable. In Pancratian, you could tell who was a Pancratius because they have these gnarled knuckles because they had broken fingers over and over and over again after training.
But I mean, how does a person overcome that challenge of not understanding how Aikido movement works?
In my own experience, coming in green, just watching martial arts movies, watched Steven Seagal. When I came in, I was like, I don't know if any of this stuff is going to work.
Yeah.
But I knew Sensei was a real martial artist.
Yeah.
And he can make it work. So if he could make it work, one day I will be able to make it work. I had to just have faith in my teacher and in the practice. And after all these years of practicing teaching, yes, it's a legitimate martial art. Now I understand. But during any of those times, 10 years in, I could have been like, you know what? This is not for me. I'm just going to do Krav Maga or BJJ, something that looks real,
Did you actually have that faith in Sensei when you were a student?
I did. Because Sensei could make it work. I've been thrown by Sensei. I've been thrown by some of the other high-level students. And, in that case, Aikido, some of these techniques, they hurt. You just pay compliance. type of thing. They break your balance, they just drill you into the floor. But at the higher level, you're just thrown and you don't know how you got thrown. You're like, I just fell down. You're not really sure.
Because you have a different perspective, because if we have a different experience of sensei. Like sensei rarely threw me.
Right.
Right. And so I have faith in sensei because he was very scary.
Yes.
And then so you go, I'm going to mouth off to my, guidance counselor, but I would never mouth off to this guy.
Right.
Right. And so I guess that creates a faith, right? I mean, because I'm afraid to challenge him. And so if I'm afraid to challenge him, I must believe that he's good. So then I must have faith in him.
I mean, some people were so scared of sensei that they would not quit. They kept on coming to class. You know what I'm talking about. You just kept on coming to class. I can never say to sensei that I'm going to quit. Of course, now people ghost people,
Yeah.
But back then, you would say, sensei, I'm going to quit. You're like, you're not going to quit. Why are you going to quit?
Yeah.
So this kind of raises a question, because all three of us experienced Furuya Sensei. But I think when we're talking about challenges, isn't part of the challenge, how does a new student find a good teacher? Because Furuya Sensei used to always say the teacher, there wasn't so much the style of the martial art as it was the teacher.
That's the hard part. You don't know what you're looking at, and you don't know what to look for. So if you have a checklist, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you go look for a person who has A, B, C, D, and F, and H, and you go, oh, that's good enough. But your eye isn't attuned to who's the best. So you go, hey, how many trophies you got? Oh, this guy has 16 gold medals. Oh, this guy's got six-pack abs. He must be good. Or, oh, he could throw you down with his little pinky. He must be good. So there's today, people, I think even in the past, they didn't know how to choose a proper teacher. So the thing about teachers in the old days, their only qualification used to be they were kibishi, strict. You'd say, oh, are you a good karate teacher? I am strict. Oh, he must be good. Are you good? They didn't say like, well, I won 14 gold medals. They just say, I'm strict. Or you go, hey, are you any good? They go, get out of here. You go, oh, he must be good.
He must be good because he doesn't want to teach me.
Yeah.
Like a good teacher in the past, they did not want to teach you. You had to prove that you wanted to be there, like, that, like the tehodoki, like the untying of hands. They make you wait by the gate. It's raining and you're just waiting for the teacher to go, oh, okay. And then the teacher will go, get that bucket of water. They go, oh, yes. Then you get the bucket of water. That means you're in. He's making you do something. He trusts you enough for you to not mess up getting a bucket of water. But, sometimes I heard it's like an hour, 2 weeks. Sometimes he waits 6 months.
Yeah, like do you ever hear the story about when the Taekwondo guy came to the dojo and challenged Sensei to a fight?
I might have heard that story.
So the story goes that this Taekwondo guy shows up at the dojo and then like just walks in and then tells Sensei, I'm going to fight you. And then Sensei goes, get out of here, and just turns around and walks away. And the guy, oh, you must be a good teacher.
Interesting.
He said, everywhere else I go, the person argues with me and wants and tries to fight me, but you're the only person that just yelled at me and turned your back on me. So I want to be your student. And then you know what Sensei said? Get out of here.
Yeah, most teachers
just kicked him out. Didn't even allow him to be a student.
Yeah, most good teachers, when you come in, they don't want you. It's not like today where like you see dollar signs when a student comes in. To a teacher, you're like, God, another guy. Like, I don't even know if this guy might be an idiot.
Yeah. So I mean, to overcome that the challenge of like how to kind of understand what Japanese culture is, that's a different challenge. Like,
yes,
you go, should I bow here? Should I not bow here? Do I call you master? Do I call you sensei? Do I, like,
it's like going to a foreign country.
Yeah. Oh, almost. Do I take off my shoes?
Yeah. But the thing about martial arts dojo is people are there to teach you every single thing, how to do every single aspect of your behavior in a dojo. So it's not like me going to Japan and be like, which side of the escalator do I stand on?
But do people even want that level of training?
It's hard to say nowadays. With everything is getting less intense. Even you hear about the military, they're getting less intense.
Or Japan is getting less formal.
Are they?
Yeah, the way the way you bow, the way you talk to people is becoming less and less formal. It's because things are becoming less patriarchal, right? You can talk back to a man. Women can do all these different things. There's that TV show that right now on Netflix, Sanctuary. It's about sumo, the lowest rank of sumo, and then they're confronting the issues of women not being allowed in the training room or on the dohyo and in the sumo ring and all those things. Like that's something that you never would have seen 20 years ago. Women, there's no way. Women Aikido teachers, no way. Right? They only valued that patriarchal, masculine thing. So but that's the thing, is do people really want to go back to those ways?
So that kind of makes me think of we've broken this down into multiple tiers. Is what you're talking about part of the mental challenges of Aikido?
The mental challenge is this: do I believe in this? Do I want to do this? Man, that guy Ken Watanabe threw me down, hit my head. Because when I was a student on Idiminage, you would try to slam that person's head on the ground.
Right.
When you cut down. Today they go, oh, let's move around in a circle together like we're dancing. One time when I was teaching at Santa Monica Dojo, you could take, it was part of Junshan Taekwondo, and part of the thing is that anyone could take the class once.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone would just come in, and then I taught the Tuesday night class or something, and every class, some Yahoo came into the dojo, and then of course at that time I had massive anger management problems. And so there's so many people on Idiminage, I would just turn the corner and just smash their head on the ground. And they go, get up, and then hit him across the neck. But today people don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So what the philosophy is the thing that do people even want martial arts like that anymore?
I can't even answer that question. For me, my first obstacle was fear of doing something new, doing something completely unfamiliar, and then having the courage to walk in the dojo with the two dogs. Remember Kuma and Michiko? That was the first test, finding the dojo. Second test, getting past the dogs.
Yeah.
Then third test, looking at the dojo and going, wow, everybody knows what they're doing here.
Yeah. That's a good point, Ken. I remember, I'm trying to think of the mental challenges in the first 10 or 15 years of training was fear. Even after I was comfortable in the dojo, walking through the garden, I would say it was more physical, mental, in the sense that my body, I could feel it getting ready for the conflict. There was a lot of conflict.
Did it make you feel at ease or uneasy?
Definitely uneasy. Anticipation. I had to confront this sort of especially the first couple of years where I was getting beat up mercilessly. You just say to yourself, I'm going to accept that I'm going to get my butt kicked for an hour, and if it's on the weekend, it might be 3 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Did you feel that way?
Yes, I felt anxiety every time I came to the dojo, but to me, that was just going into battle.
Yeah.
After a while, you still have that anxiety, but the anxiety more turns into concern for how can I go in and not mess something up? Before, you're just scared because anything you do would be you break a rule or do something stupid. And after a while, you just go in and you mentally prepare yourself. Okay, I'm going into battle. How can I prepare myself so I do not get into trouble? Do the correct thing.
How long did it take you to get to that level?
I don't even remember. I just felt always, I never stopped feeling anxious when it came to the dojo because I was always on alert. You're always on alert. And to me, that was excellent training because you're always on alert. You're just not walking in going, hello, Sensei. You're not doing stuff like that. You just came in and you're used to doing the correct thing all the time.
Sensei, it looks like you have you're thinking of something different.
No, I'm trying to figure out if I
had a feeling.
Had that after a certain amount of time. I don't recall having that after the first year or two.
like that fear, that anxiousness?
No, because I got to this place where I wanted to compete with Sensei.
Okay.
So then I'm like, all right, my bag's like one of the things I used to think, and this is not true, is I always thought that Sensei was going to stop me at the door and check to see how my uniform was folded.
Wow.
And so I always folded my uniform a certain way and the bag a certain way so that I could beat him if he ever asked me if my uniform was folded correctly to and fro. Right?
Really?
Always. I always prepared myself. Okay. Before downtown was really accessible, at 3:00, I would drink 64 ounces of water and take 2 Advil, but that ended up ruining my stomach. But I would drink 64 ounces of water because there's no bathroom. So by the time I got to 5:00 to leave for the dojo, I was sufficiently hydrated. So I think, how do I beat something like this? How do I have my extra uniform in the car. I have this. So I enjoyed the desire to beat Sensei. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a psychopath, dude. Like, I am a total psychopath. Like, when Kenny lost his keys taking Sensei out that one time, I heard the story, and then the next day I taped hide a key under my car. Right? Like, all those things, like all those little things, like I desperately wanted to beat Sensei at his own game.
But
and that happened in what year, do you think?
That's what I was trying to think. Like,
after year 1?
I could fold my own hakama in 58 seconds. Well, not like just blah, blah, blah. In 58. I can still fold my hakama fast, but I timed myself to where I got it down to 58 seconds. And then I said, Sensei has a 2-minute time limit on folding a hakama. I can do 58 seconds. There's no need to push it any farther. Not try to get it down to 40 seconds or something like that. But I don't. So that's what I was trying to think, like, did I, after a certain level, I was more like, I don't know if brutish is the right word, where you're like, okay, let's see this. Let's see what we got. You showed up on time. Like, Sensei would have me get his favorite drink. He liked A&W Diet Cream Soda.
Yeah.
And then I would buy him a case, and then I would keep a case in the trunk. And then he would say, like, oh, can you give me a case? I go, here's your case. He goes, oh, did you have it in the trunk? And I go, height. He goes, why do you have that? I go, just so I would never be short.
Right.
I always made sure I had enough money, enough gas. I don't know. So I'm trying to think of when did I start competing and stop being anxious? But I mean, I guess you're always anxious.
You're always, maybe anxious is not the right word. You're just mentally ready for anything. I was mentally ready for anything, but I never went to your extent, which if I was a good student, I would have went to Sensei's extent of having everything ready, because that's what a martial artist should be like.
Right.
But you had a different relationship with Sensei than I did. Mine was more contentious. So I felt like, well, he's going to attack. He's going to attack. And then that's why I wanted to be ready. So you didn't have that where you had a contentious relationship. Mine was contentious. So I felt like, he's going to be one of these days. He's going to spring out from behind the door and go, let me see your bag. And then chastise me about how I folded the hakama.
Spring out behind the door, pop out.
I swear to God, that's what I thought. He's going to, or I would walk up the stairs, and then remember he would like pile up his newspapers, and like they'd have this like 3-foot stack of newspapers, and then he'd have to like throw them away or whatever it is. I would see the newspapers and I go, try to make me bump into that so it falls down. Not on my watch. But then some other fool would walk in right behind me, knock it all over, and Sensei would freak out. And I would go, I didn't get caught in that trap. So I don't know how many years it was. Maybe like 5 years. Or I can't even remember. But the thing is that I had a different experience. So when I drove home, most people say, "Oh, I felt really good." I was always angry after class.
Wow.
Why do you think you felt angry after class?
Because I would get into it with people on the mat, and then Sensei would be a jerk to me, and then I would be upset when I went home. But I wasn't upset to where I go, I'm just gonna quit. I'd be go, I want to beat these guys at their own game.
So that's like when you mentioned like not upset enough to quit. I mean, we're talking about obstacles. It seems like one of the obstacles mentally is the ability to stay the course through arduous experiences. How did you do that? How did both of you guys do that?
I personally am not a contentious person. Like, I'm not a big conflict person.
Right.
So to me, Aikido was, it works. But Aikido has within the technique, there are very aggressive things within the technique that you need to develop. And that helped me balance out, like, I don't want to fight you, to like, I'll hit you if I have to, because that's part of movement. You need that mentality. But for me, like, I just go with the flow, and you try your best.
Was there ever for either of you, because I'm trying to think of myself, was there ever, like, after, for you maybe it's 2 years, for you might be 2 years, 3 years, where you're like, I've exhausted my mental energy for this practice?
No, but the thing is, I'd always think, how much more do I want to deal with this? Like, because I fought with Sensei a lot, right? So it'd just be like, what? And then I'm a rules person. The rule is like this. So then when I'm because I have ADHD, and so my mind instantly picks out the details. So I go, oh, Bill said this, but then I notice that Bill does not do it. And then that's where it makes me all upset. But like, yeah, it's got to be like 3 or 4 years. I don't think, because I mean, I really just felt like I really just wanted to win. I wanted to beat Sensei at his own
Because
game.
we've talked about in previous podcasts about what are the challenging time inflection points in practice, like third cue, third dawn. I guess it's a similar question for today. Is like, what do you think the most likely time period or experience where people have to face down endurance in practice and stay with the course and not quit? Like, I guess the challenge is, how do people not quit? Like, how do we communicate to people that are struggling that it's worthwhile?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how to do that, because I had hate. So they say a young person has EG, willfulness.
Okay.
And it's the teacher or the coach's job to change that willfulness into fighting spirit. And so with Sensei, like, I was like, at a certain point, I'm going to beat these people at their own game. And then, like, I would go home and do cardio. I would go home after class and go running. I would go home and do suburi. I would go home and do swati waza, so that they, like, if I had took a class and there was something that I couldn't do, or someone beat me at, I would go home and I would work on it. And then I would pray for the day that I get to, put it back on them.
So you motivated yourself.
Well, but that is motivation through hate.
Yeah.
That negativity. But so that's why I don't want people to do that today. Like, the teacher is supposed to be your first and foremost enemy, but I can't do that to people. I'm like, hey man, you gotta be better. You gotta stop doing that.
But they say in traditional martial arts, you're supposed to kind of hate your teacher. You're supposed to both hate your teacher and love your teacher. But your teacher is your first enemy, and your job is to surpass your teacher. And your teacher wants you to surpass them, because if you're not better than them, the art is going to die.
Right.
It's going to just go, you're just a carbon copy of another carbon copy of another carbon copy. Oh, sorry, not carbon copy. I'm dating myself. Photocopy.
Right.
A scan now.
A scan.
A scan of a scan.
A scan of a scan of a scan. You got to be like the OG to the OG to the OG. And then the art has a chance to survive and maybe even advance.
So, but like if you're, let's say you have the resolve not to quit, and then but the practice is too physical, how do you get through that without them just making the practice easier for you?
When I first started, I was in horrible shape. I'm unathletic, uncoordinated. I didn't like sports. I don't like working out. I still do not like working out. I don't like exercising. But practice is fine. But for me, what I had to do was you just ease into the movement, because what Sensei said was learn the movement first. Don't use power and strength and speed.
Or spirituality.
Or spirituality. That you get too spiritual, then you just sit there thinking, but you have to move your feet, move your hands the right way. You gotta know which way is left, right, up, down, back, forward, side. A lot of times when I teach people, they don't know these. Like, when you get on the mat, all these simple things just go out the window. You're like, which way is up? up. Oh no, down. It's kind of like you're thrown into like this environment where nothing makes sense. So you forget all your common sense almost. Like I had to just do the movement without using any power.
But if let's say you did karate first, and you have like 5th dan in karate, and then you try to do Aikido, it's hard to forget that karate in order to learn that Aikido, right? Isn't that like, you're like, oh, I'm used to punching, I'm used to counter punching, I'm used to waiting. Mr. Miyagi said that you're not supposed to strike first, and so you're waiting, and then you go, oh, that doesn't work for Aikido. So then how do you overcome that obstacle of like you have this other style of martial arts inside of you? Because you've heard people say that that lame thing. They go, oh, Aikido's going to be my retirement art. I'm going to do Aikido when I retire from karate. And you go,
good luck with that.
Yeah, you go, what? There's no way, man. To learn that the fall when you're like 70 or something. Like, but people say stupid stuff like that. But like, how do you get over that hurdle of having a different martial art inside of you? Because you can't have two competing thoughts. Karate is one way, has a one philosophy. Aikido has a different philosophy. You can't be eating ice cream and steak at the same time.
So I have a student who does other martial arts, harder martial arts, and he's a Iaido student of mine. He told me what I tell him in the class is almost exactly what he learned in traditional karate, which is when you move, you're supposed to move with balance, posture, hide your footwork. You're not supposed to telegraph. All these things, martial art, whatever martial art you do, they share these certain things like, posture, balance, issuing power, extending your power out, timing, spacing, how you watch your opponent, your mental focus when you watch your opponent. I suspect that most of these things are all the same. Just the way you go up the mountain to reach the peak of martial arts, every martial art has a different path. But it's hard to, I would say, for if you already know something, you have to almost unlearn it and then relearn it. Like a guy with a 5th dan karate might have a leg up on someone who does not know anything about martial arts. Or he can just be so dogmatic and stiff-minded that he would never learn Aikido.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, a person is generally dogmatic and stiff-minded. So they can't, how do they let go of that?
I have no question other than don't do it. Don't be like that. But the thing is, you know how hard it is to break a bad habit. Like, you have to want to break that bad habit, or you'll always have that bad habit. Like in recovery, you got to want to be better, or you're never going to be better. That's what I heard.
So like in ancient Greek times, do they ever consider their martial arts kind of like does, like, like the way, like
so it's interesting. The story that comes to my mind immediately when you say that is that the Spartans generally prohibited their soldiers from participating at the Olympics in the martial arts events, Pancratian, wrestling, and boxing, because they were martial artists in the way we would think of it. And so for them, the competition is fake, but it has higher consequences. So if you're a high-level Spartan martial artist and you go in the boxing ring, they would say basically you either have to win or die. And so there was a sense in which the Spartans, separate from the other Greek tribes, started to break away from sports because they believed it was bad spiritual training.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's there. I think there's a lot of that kind of element in contemporary martial arts philosophy. In a weird way, it kind of jives a little bit with Aikido, which doesn't have competition. Like for the Spartans, it was like they trained, but they never competed.
I actually did not know that.
I didn't know that either about Spartans.
Yeah. Well, the other reason is the Spartan culture was a military culture, and they depended on the deterrence factor of being the most competent warriors. And the other side of this coin was that if they ever got defeated in a martial combat at the Olympics, it would lead to a deterioration of the reputation of the Spartan military force. So it had two pieces to it. One was the outward looking to keep their reputation. The other one was the individual person would have to be willing to die in these competitions, which other competitors generally weren't.
But like that's that it's a different mindset, and people don't even have that today.
No.
Even if they say like, oh yeah, this is life. Like you look at a person who does other martial arts, and you think, oh, that person, the way they carry themselves is so poor. The way they, you know that they're a martial artist for one, but then they're starting to fight in flip flops, and you think, I rarely, if ever, will wear flip flops. Because in my mind, I'm pushing my stroller, I'm pushing my kids, I'm with my kids. I'm going to have to run and fight or grab or deter someone, and I can't be in flip-flops. Right. Every morning when I drive my kids to school, I go, I should just wear my pajamas. And I go, no. I used to say, I might have to get out and get crazy on someone. But now I don't say that. I go, someone might need my help, and I really shouldn't jump out in my pajamas and flip-flops. But you have to have that mindset.
It's funny you say that because, as a lawyer, professional, who's in the business world all the time, it's less now. But when I was younger, people wore ties with their suits. I never wanted to wear a tie because all I could think of was someone's going to grab that tie, try to choke me out with it, and I to this day I still really don't like.
Yeah, you and Joe Rogan, right? He's all. He has this whole thing about, I don't wear ties. You could choke somebody to death. But what's the
chance of that happening?
Well, no, it's a chance. Martial arts is based on two things: timing, spacing. So if you allow the spacing to collapse and they could grab your tie, you should be choked out with it.
That's right.
And then that tie cost you $750. You can't just let it dangle out there. You should be taking care of it. Right? Martial arts is based on timing and spacing. After the touchy eye, the timing and spacing happens using that touchy eye. Whatever you do after that's karate. Whatever you do after that's aikido. Whatever you do after that's judo. But it's the touchy eye, the spacing and timing is all the same, right? So if you leave your tie out there for someone to choke you, or if they could come up behind you and choke you, isn't that your fault? It doesn't matter what you're wearing. They could choke you out with your
shirt.
With your shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if you like ties, wear a tie, right? But you shouldn't be afraid of that. But
you could say like this. You can be so strong that you can wear flip-flops and a tie, and you know what? You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Because you can take care of yourself. But if you go out in the world wearing a bulletproof vest and a hat and a helmet because you're scared all the time, that's one thing. If you go out just wearing a tie and flip-flops, knowing that whatever happens, you can take care of it, or you're smart enough not to get in
trouble.
That's the other thing too. Kind of like Miyamoto Musashi's Happo Biraki, his completely open stance. He's completely open on all 8 sides. But in being open on all 8 sides, he's completely prepared on all 8 sides.
Right.
He's not looking at you and all other 7 sides are completely dead. He's open at all 8 sides, ready for anything. You could think of it like that. You could think about being so strong that you don't care, or putting on your padded vest and your Kevlar and your big heavy boots and your gloves with the studs on it. And you could be like that thinking, okay, I'm strong now. Yeah, I'm protected. There's that.
There's a famous bushcraft, the grandfather of bushcraft. You know what bushcraft is?
No.
Wilderness skills.
Wilderness survival skills. Mars Kochansky, he says, the more you know, the less you need.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, and you go, oh, that's so super true. But that's the thing. If you're a martial artist, how scared are you going to be? This person's going to come grab me. This person, again, you have to understand. You have to be a martial artist about everything. You walk in the room and you go, oh man, there's all these gangbangers with guns. Well, I'm just going to eat my sandwich in here. You have to go, well, excuse me, and close the door and briskly walk away, right? You win all the fights you never get into. So if you're going to wait and go, oh my God, this guy's going to choke me with my tie, I don't know. I mean, you probably shouldn't wear a tie, but also, why did you let the spacing collapse?
Yeah, like you live in fear all the time.
Yeah, you want them to grab it, and then you time it their grab with your grab, and then you just throw them down.
Yeah, grab their tie, do Nikkyo, do Sankyo, something like that.
Yeah, or it's tied in a double Windsor, which does not. It's a comfortable choke, right? But like that's the thing is like when you understand this, one philosophical or problem that people could have or obstacle is that what my son asked me. He's reading this book on Aikido right now. He's 10 years old. He asked me, what is the difference between Aiki Jutsu and Aikido? Right? So you think about, what do you think the difference is?
Just by the words, Do is way, Jutsu is like a technique. And when they think about Aiki Jutsu, Aiki Jujitsu, it's just, to me, it's like what came before Aikido, before O-Sensei. O-Sensei made Aikido. Aiki Jujitsu was what he... I mean, the term Aiki has been in Japanese culture, they see, for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's in that kami, that diagram of all the kamis, and there's Aiki in there.
And it's really hard to explain. It's like explaining God to somebody. There's no definition for it. You just have to understand it in your heart and your body. Aiki or like God or Jesus or something like that. You have to just fully drink the Kool-Aid and be like, I'm I'm all in, I understand it, but in your body.
Well, what I was saying is that what I was trying to tell my son is that, Jitsu is technique,
yes,
and Do is lifestyle, way of life. But really, if you think about it, that's one of the problems that most people have is that you can't make it a lifestyle until you've mastered the Jitsu or Jutsu,
yes,
the technique. Once you master the techniques, then you have to kind of ask yourself, okay, well, do I fully believe in this? And then I'm going to follow the way of Aikido. Because, like I was telling the people today in intensive that in the old days, you did a lot of shibori. So your hands got really strong. You did a lot of suburi. So your hands became strong, right? And so when someone grabbed you and you did Nikkyo, you could easily break their wrist with like almost no power. But today, people don't have those strong hands. But also today, we don't really want to break anybody's wrists. We just want to immobilize them. So immobilizing them is kind of the Do way of doing it. Breaking it is kind of the Jutsu technique-wise. But you have to make that leap in your own heart that, well, I really don't want to, this guy's a musician. I'm not going to break his wrist. And then he can't work anymore. Or I don't really care. And then I break every person's wrist.
I'm like, when you're first come to the dojo, one of the obstacles, mental obstacles, is just like that Aiki thing. It's very hard to understand because we're just used to fighting. You hit me, I hit you. You push me, I push you back. And Aiki is not like that. Or they say Judo is not like that. You don't push against a push. But for a new person going into Aikido, like for me, when I saw Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, Yonkyo in a demonstration, I was like, how can you just grab someone's arm and take them down? Come on, man. You need to trip their leg. You need to lower them on their hip and throw them. How can you just grab someone's arm? I saw Ikkyo. How can you like grab their arm and just bring them down? That's ridiculous. I thought that was ridiculous. So then someone did it to me. I was like, oh, it works. Okay, I understand now. Ikkyo, yeah. So even for me, obstacle is like, does this stuff even work? Aiki is it's so abstract. It's such a sophisticated concept, martial arts wise. But normal people are like, just seeing like Mike Tyson beat someone up. Who could withstand more pain? Who could last through like 10 rounds?
That's the Benny the Jet thing. When he was talking to Benny the Jet, the famous kickboxer fighter.
Yeah.
And then Benny the Jet told Sensei, he goes, do you know what my secret is? And then Sensei goes, no. He said, I can take more pain than anyone else.
Benny the Jet thing, yeah. I can take more pain than the other person, but is that a sustainable way to do combat in warfare? It's not very sustainable in terms of warfare, waging war, or fighting somebody.
What I was going to say, Sensei and Ken, is that when I was listening to your description of Jutsu and Do, the first thing that came into my mind without thinking about it was that the difference between Jutsu and Do is Do seems to have an ethical or moral component to it. And I think is a good explanation for what you said about, do you really want to be in a position where you're training your hands to break someone's wrist? At a moral and ethical level, we're gonna say that the resolution of the conflict is in a peaceful way or a less harmful way is a better way to solve a problem. And to me, that's an ethical framing of how to use physical technique.
No, what you're saying is true. It's like that is definitely there is an ethical spiritual component to Do, and there is no ethical spiritual component to Jutsu.
Yeah, Jutsu is almost, in a sense, it's full and it's empty at the same time. It's the whole technique of how you apply a pin or a choke, but how you apply that pin or choke depends on your ethics and what you believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and then the calmness of while you're doing it, like that guy who choked out the guy in the subway, New York subway, choked him, and then you were asking me earlier about choking people, and I said, well, there's choke, and then there's strangulation.
Right.
And so you have to know the difference between the two, because at some point you have to let the choke go so you don't strangle them to death.
Right.
Because do you want that? Do you want that in your brain when you wake up in the middle of the night? You see that? No.
So that's why I think one of the most beautiful aspects of Aikido and the hardest to understand is Sensei, especially Sensei's spiritual, his purification, things that he did that for some people, they look like they were just frosting on top of the cake, and the cake was Jutsu. But I think if you really try to look at it, I think he was trying to create an entirely different ethical system that was compassionate for all beings, which is pretty amazing thing to try to do. It's super hard to live up to.
Yeah, that's the hard part. It's graduate school, in quantum physics that you're trying to teach to your fourth grader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like my son, right? He's like 10 years old, and he's like talking to me about these really high level spiritual concepts. Nothing exists, Aikido and the ethics of throwing someone down and all these different things. He can he can talk about them, but he can't understand them.
Right.
And so in Pure Land Buddhism, they say you don't talk to children about enlightenment. You just teach them to the repetition of the sutras, and then enlightenment will come later on. But I mean, it's when we get in this place when you're trying to teach people this philosophical, high-level, enlightened movement of Sensei, a lot of these people are going to get it wrong.
Right.
Because they're trying to start at the Do, and you really got to start at the Jutsu level.
Right.
And you got to learn how to move. Movement, timing, it's all timing and spacing.
Right.
When you get old and you lose the ability to move your feet, you're going to have to create timing and spacing by feel.
Right. But
if you don't know how to, if you didn't understand timing and spacing with your feet, you're never going to learn it by feel.
Right.
That concept is way too far out there. But, what are you going to do? You got to tell some person to devote 50 years of their life so that they can do Aikido when they're, 80 years old and still throw people down. They go, man, I just want to go to sleep right now.
Right.
Right. And so how many people really want that?
Well, so that's a good question. I was thinking to myself, so many of the people that I meet that are martial artists but not Aikidoists, they often do talk about the ethical or spiritual component. And many people that start it, if you ask them what made you choose Aikido over karate, they might say the ethical component to it. I mean, you're right. You can't start there, but it seems like the impetus for many people is the overarching philosophical structure.
And that's probably why Aikido is all messed up right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, they learn all the sophisticated stuff
Without
too
the basics.
soon.
Yeah.
Because I heard in Aikido, the philosophy of Aikido, non-resistance, love for your opponent, all these things that we talk about, the company line of Aikido, it's all in the technique already. So what Sensei told me is when you understand the technique, when you can do it competently, and you practice correctly, the philosophy of Aikido is in your body already.
Mm.
And once it's in your body, once the concept is in your body, it's easy for your mind to grasp it. Because without knowing how to negotiate attack without obliterating your opponent, when you can do it, lining up with them, blending with them, throwing them down nicely, when you could do that in even a very strong way, then you understand the philosophy of Aikido somehow in your head. But if you just think about it, I think, like think about God, like, oh yeah, God is the guy in the sky. Right. It's very hard to understand, I think. Yeah.
Well, I just saw this video the other day, and they're talking about how your body, your muscles, your skeletal system is just this huge endocrine pumping hormones into your body. And then that's how you create this change in your life.
All psychology, all neuroscience. And this is, I think, the most interesting finding of the last decade in all of science. And this is the insight that your muscles are basically an endocrine organ that secrete hormones into your bloodstream that affect every system of your body. Your muscles, they secrete chemicals and proteins when you exercise that are also really good for your brain health. And one of the first papers almost 10 years ago that was published explaining that when you contract your muscles, they literally secrete these proteins into your bloodstream that make you resilient to stress and can protect you from depression. The scientists called them hope molecules. This idea that literally your muscles are manufacturing like antidepressant molecules. And the only way to get them into your bloodstream where they can then travel to your brain is you have to contract your muscles. Like that's it. It's like a pharmacy in your muscles. And anything you do that contracts them, walking, hiking, running, dancing, weightlifting, like swimming, anything, you are going to be dumping hope molecules into your bloodstream that when they get to your brain, they work as an antidepressant. And they also help people recover from trauma. Like that's like a miracle.
So it's
wow.
You create the change because it's the mechanical mechanism which pushes the theories and hormones of your mind into your body. And then they say that all your emotions are kept in your soft tissue.
So what I said was completely true. The way you move in Aikido in a non-aggressive yet aggressive way, round, soft, but strong, focused, that your body totally understands Aikido in a certain way, on a certain extent.
Yeah, so if you think about this, every time you bow to another person, you have to lower your head.
Yeah.
By lowering your head, it's a metaphor or something like that of respect, forgiveness, all these different higher consciousness things. And so the more you bow to others, the more easily it is for you to have a not be egotistical about things, because you're already accustomed to being humble because you bow, because you say onegaishimasu, you say thank you. And then the leap to being a good person is not that hard. But if you're a person that doesn't bow, just tilt your head, so you're never getting that, I don't know what you would even call it, the physical practice of the higher consciousness concept of bowing to show humility. Thanking people by bowing, right? So, I mean, I don't know if that's the impetus for bowing, but it makes sense. Basically, what you're saying is that you're miming it until your body can do it.
Oh, I think this is a really good idea. What both of you are saying as a culmination of the topic of overcoming challenges is how training through physical action has a result of mental and philosophical import.
Yeah, and that all obstacles, mind, body, technique, spiritual, they're all the same. They're just different levels. It's the same. not being able to do Tenkan is the same thing as not being able to yield to others at work, right? There's just they're all the same. And that Aikido is this physical phenomena that teaches you philosophical concepts without you knowing it. So you can't help becoming a better person, friendlier, nicer, and all those things. And you think all I did was do Aikido.
Right.
But you wonder, is it the techniques?
I think it is a technique, but also the mindset. You have to do Aikido, practice it correctly, yet you need to practice Aikido as a martial art. Because if there's no martial aspect to Aikido, then it's
just dancing.
It's just dancing. You don't get all of the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the good stuff. Like you don't get the benefit of the training.
Right.
Here's an interesting question is for you. In Aikido, there are no chokes. Well, there's one choke, but there's no Kihon Waza choke. So you wonder if choking people by nature is not a higher level concept.
My feeling on this is because Aikido, the power comes from movement. Like you're moving from point A to point B, displacing your opponent's center with your own center. To me, now that I think about it, a choke is too static because you're just sitting there, just struggling, just holding onto something, but you're not really moving.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be the reason why we don't choke in Aikido. And the other reason is they don't choke in swordsmanship and spearmanship. You just cut the guy down, you just poke him. There's no choke in weapons. In weapons, you just die. When you're choking, you could just choke him into submission and they may live, or you can just break their neck. But I have a feeling in Aikido, the one where you like elbow and your hand comes around. Well, there's a throw in there. You're supposed to step back and just chuck him.
Mm.
That's not the end of the technique. And I'm like, ooh, that is a nasty, nasty throw, But we never practice that because it's not safe.
Mm.
But someone on the street, you just disarm them, get them in a headlock, and you take a big step back and you just throw your arms out and they land where they may lie.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we don't have chokes in Aikido.
Mm-hmm.
It's a static technique. It's not moving.
Well, I really like the crest that we had come to. I think it's a really good spot.
Yeah. I don't know how much it'll help like beginners, because to me, it's like when you're a beginner, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing and my body hurts from the ukemi.
Sure.
Well, and that's the main obstacle is really just to have faith and perseverance.
And perseverance and willpower. Like if you give up, like they say, like you could be super talented, but if you just practice for 1 week,
yeah,
that you go back to zero. Or you can be super talented and practice for 10 years and you become this almost like godlike being of whatever art you did. But you can be super talented and be like, oh, I'm good. And I got it after like a month.
Well, that's why you feel sorry for the person who's the natural, because they never know what it's like to struggle.
Yep.
And then they don't learn the value of hard work, perseverance.
Yep, exactly.
And that's where they say, oh, hard work without the discipline means nothing.
It means nothing.
And so the only way to get over obstacles in your training is to just keep pushing through, and then have faith in your teacher, have faith in your art. Aikido, O Sensei died in 1969, right? So it's a modern martial art, but so many people do it and so many people have faith in it. You have to kind of say, wow, if millions of people have faith in it, then I should at least have a little bit of faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Like, it's worked. You hear stories about Aikidoists in the past throwing people down in life or death situations. And it's gotta work. Come on, man. Like, it's just, like you said, it's not the art, it's the person, it's the practitioner.
Mm.
I mean, Aikido is very, very, martial arts is really hard to learn. Like you have to be On one hand, you have to be very hard on yourself. I have to get this. I got to be the best. And on the other hand, you have to be very kind with yourself. Like, it's okay to make a mistake, you know? On one hand, you got to be super strict on yourself. But on the other hand, you got to be like very lenient on yourself at the same time. You know, like you can't just be a hard ass all the time. You just be like, you just go crazy. But you can't be too easy on yourself. Then you never improve.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
I think it is.
Well, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And don't forget to like or subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.